Hi friends, I'm Andy Green, and today I'm talking about Spotify and Joe Rogan because this is the Naked Man Podcast. I use Spotify all the time. I was listening to Spotify when I wrote this. I love making playlists, collaborating on playlists with friends, discovering other people's playlists. It has the best infrastructure for all these wonderful things that feeds my creativity and has been a big facet in my own personal evolution in music. It's an important part of my relationship with my partner and with some of my best friends who connect best through music. Plus, it's the main hub for this podcast. I even upload the podcast through Anchor.fm, a platform owned by Spotify. I made the switch to Anchor because it was so much easier than any other hosting platform I had used, and I've used several, and honestly, I need that help. You've likely heard by now that Neil Young, Joni Mitchell, and other artists have removed their music from Spotify in protest to the lies and misinformation being spread on their platform through Joe Rogan's podcast, and likely others. Now let's be clear. I am Team Neil Young, Team Joni Mitchell, Team not Joe Rogan, Team not Spotify. It's irresponsible and unsafe to support and spread his toxic nonsense. So I'm thrilled that Spotify has lost $4 billion due to their handling of the situation. I am less thrilled, however, that Spotify and Rogan have decided to do the bare minimum in response. Spotify has only added warnings and easier access to reputable resources within Rogan's podcast, but to this point, hasn't removed the incriminating episodes in question. Rogan has offered a pat apology and promises to bring more balanced views to his podcast. Right. That Spotify is gross isn't news. Another multi-billion-dollar company that cares more about money than people, that's every multi-billion-dollar company. That's a function of this economy. They basically found a way for Napster to be legal and have been robbing artists for years, and I tacitly accepted that by using their service because it was easy and fun. I like Spotify. And now I feel shame about it. And furthermore, through this development, I've learned that Spotify was run by Jared Kushner's brother, Joshua, so the gross isn't going to stop anytime soon. Especially as a podcaster, I'm not ignorant of their attempts at monopolizing the podcasting industry and squeezing out people with less known voices in favor of big-name celebrities. I'm evidence of the losing battle. But when Neil Young tweets at us to now find his high-res music on Amazon Music as if that's somehow better or any different than Spotify is hilarious and hypocritical. It feels almost as if Amazon has turned this into a publicity stunt in their favor. We all have to make the decisions that feel right for us and that we can do. I don't use Amazon, for example, but my parents have Prime, and I use their login to watch Amazon Prime, convincing myself that because I don't spend any money in support of them, I'm somehow better. But that's bullshit mental gymnastics, and the black and white morality we're overlaying everything with is only bringing us infinite shame and guilt. There's a reason people use Spotify. There's a reason people use Amazon. It helps and improves their lives. Their price points are the problem, but also why people use them. Many can't afford to shop anywhere but the cheapest route, and still more aren't in the financial position to live their life politically by paying more for the same products. That's the trap we're in, and it's not healthy and certainly not helping to apply our moralities and judgment upon others. When I posted my initial thoughts on Instagram, when I was talking this out and had not yet made a decision, someone in response said that it was simply a choice between the easy thing to do and the right thing to do, and asked me if I needed help deciding which route to take. Now, I'm not going to lie, this response initially made me angry. I felt defensive because I felt shame and guilt. And it hurts because I don't disagree with her. Was I really just complaining? Oh, woe is me, straight white boy, I have to switch from Spotify. Maybe I was. But I don't think this is as simple as choosing between the easy thing and the right thing. Spotify, for all its many faults, brings me joy. It helps me creatively. It improves this show. It improves my relationships with people. And that's no small thing. Maybe my complaining wasn't just that. It was and is grieving. Grieving because getting rid of Spotify does make my life harder in a small way, and life's hard enough. I'm grieving not about Spotify, but about the life we're forced to live in right now, where every facet of it is infected with toxicity, misinformation, exploitation, hate, and money. This situation makes me feel like I'm not working hard enough, that I'm not good enough, and I'm closer than I've ever been in my life to believing that I do work hard and that I am enough. Let's not pretend like quitting Spotify is the solution to our problems. There are systemic problems in everything I love, not just music, sports, movies, TV, beer, coffee, restaurants, everything. It's the system. Chopping off Spotify's head only necessitates a more powerful new head of Hydra. The only way to live my life in a way that isn't infected by capitalism, by our society, is to leave it. I'd have to grow my own food, have my own well, and not rely on anybody for anything I use in my life. Now, I would love that utopia, but it also sounds lonely and impossible, and certainly not within my means. It's also not who I am, because I realize something. If Spotify is home to Joe Rogan, it's home to his fans. And in some small way, those fans on Spotify are more likely to find this show if I remain on Spotify. I haven't quite figured out how to reach those people, but I know this. If there's anyone that I could get to listen to my show, it's a Joe Rogan fan. That idea terrifies me, but I'm curious about their reactions. I'm hopeful. I want to speak to them. I want to get to know them. I have a couple friends who listen to Joe Rogan, and they aren't awful, horrible people. And I'm not making excuses for them either, but it's easier to lump everyone and every decision into good, bad, easy, hard categories. But it's just not so binary, and that black and white morality, in my experience with myself, as someone who has always defined, ranked, kept score, judged myself in stark contrasts, all or nothing thinking, well, that only lends itself to more judgment of self and others. So, not without reservations, but in this moment, I'm keeping this show on Spotify. I also am empowered with the ability to change my mind tomorrow if I want to, or anytime. I'm going to migrate my personal music elsewhere, but I have to do some research first, so I'm not forced to move back and forth between toxic services at the whims of the news cycle. That is the decision that feels right for me for this show. Best of luck on whatever decision you make. I'll do my best not to judge you for it. Whew. Thank you for listening and being here. This was obviously a change of plans, but the groovy thing about being the one making the plans is that I can change them, and I was compelled to say something. And keep in mind, this wasn't intended to start an argument or a debate. I'm just trying to figure it out for myself. That's all I can do. And if you like what I'm doing, if you like what you're hearing, do me a favor. Please tell someone else about the podcast. Share it with someone you love or want to love. Tell everyone. It would mean a lot to me. Please rate and subscribe to us on iTunes, and yes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to join our community, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at NakedManPod, and don't hesitate to reach out to us at nakedmanpod@gmail.com. And now, because I want to force myself to make this come true, I will be starting a Patreon in February, which will come with further avenues for community. Until then, if you have any thoughts and feelings you'd like to share about your decision-making in regards to Spotify or anything at all, call and leave a message at the Naked Man phone line at 747-231-7120. Next time on the Naked Man podcast, as promised last time, the long-awaited episode with my therapist. Ooh. In the meantime, as my dad always says, be sweet. This episode of the Naked Man podcast was conceived by Andy Green. The Naked Man is a podcast hosted, created, and produced by me, Andy Green. All music was composed by Robert Panico, and all graphics were created by Christopher Miles.